Namaste everyone. Welcome to yet another session of Yes Talks. For the month of October, we are doing a series on psychology and spirituality. As you all know, October is a mental health mental health week, and we are trying to bring in that how can psychology be seen from a different perspective, from a more integral perspective. And to begin this series, today we have Dr. Soumitra Basu. He's a consultant psychiatrist based in Calcutta and Pondicherry and works with the consciousness paradigm in health and psychology. He conducts workshops in personal growth and is the founder editor of NAMAH, the Journal of Integral Health. He has also authored a book on integral health and has developed a module on consciousness based psychology with Michael Miovic based on the wisdoms of Sri Aurobindo and the mother. And that's what his topic is today for consciousness based psychology. We welcome you, Dr. Basu, and over to you.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes.
So, we will be talking today about consciousness-based psychology, which is just a nomenclature for the psychological system of Sri Aurobindo. As you know, that Dr. Dalal and Dr. Indra Sen, our pioneers, are what you call the people who had first started working on Sri Aurobindo psychology. So they had been using different terms at different times, and Dr. Indra Sen had used the word integral psychology. But unfortunately, Ken Wilber has patented that term for something else, meaning an integration of different systems, which doesn't fit with our concept of integral psychology, which is a totally different denouement. And then therefore different terms were used at different times, and there were controversies. Integral yoga psychology is the term which we commonly use. Still, Dr. Dalal, when he wrote a very seminal book on Sri Aurobindo psychology, he named it to a greater psychology, towards a greater psychology, using Sri Aurobindo's phrase. So as not to get into any controversy. However, we have now come, Michael and myself, we have now been developing this module of consciousness-based psychology in a way in which it would be acceptable to all other disciplines also. Because what we are wanting to project from Sri Aurobindo's perspective is not something to compete with other theories and other systems. We are not going to do that. We are presenting something structure. It has a structure of planes of consciousness. It gives you the idea of a structure of being. It gives you the planes of consciousness from which you can understand the planes of pathology which are rising, and a very complex structure. I will come to that. And it also gives rise to what you call psychodynamic issues, and counseling paradigms can be constructed at each level of consciousness. So this is something which you can entirely draw from this model. But if you are working with other models, you see, because the mind is varied, and the mind will always want, the universal mind always wants variations. So it will be always wanting to work with different kinds of things, different variations of the same thing. Sri Aurobindo himself said that psychology is a field which is maintained by a number of theories together. By a number of theories together. You see, he was so practical. He said this field is held by a number of theories together. But all other theories also can take illumination from Sri Aurobindo's model and can enlarge their own repertoire. They can enlarge their own model. So it is not that they have to leave their model to come to Sri Aurobindo. They can be with their model, with the model of, you see, Jungian model or with the Freudian model, but they can expand the scope. So from the Freudian model, you can expand from the unconscious, you can go to the superconscious. From Jung, you can go from the center of integration, can shift to the, what you call, the true center, which is the psychic being. So like that, there is a scope that you can enlarge yourself, your theories or your thinking in many directions, taking light from Sri Aurobindo. So in this way, we are, this is the way we have constructed the consciousness-based psychology module so that it can be used separately, or it can be used by other disciplines to enlarge their own repertoire of knowledge. So it is flexible. It is a very flexible thing. We are not competing with others. We are bringing all the wisdom that has been accumulated, and Sri Aurobindo is bringing all the accumulated wisdom into describing the human in the structure of the being, which is one of the most comprehensive structural maps of consciousness that has ever been made, that has ever been made. You see, when we use the word being instead of the word personality when we talk about our integral psychology, because being is something which has a dimension of personality and which has also a dimension of impersonality. So when we use the word being, it has an advantage that you can include the dimension of personality and you can also include the dimension of impersonality, which is also very important. The dimension of impersonality is also very important. So psychology, you see, also modern Western psychology, it has to now expand its scope to include this dimension of impersonality. Now, for the structure of the being, which Sri Aurobindo has constructed, a very beautiful, a very complex structure. There is a structure, many level structure, multi-level structure, I will say, and there are these levels which are going from below upwards, and there are levels which are traveling from the outside to the inside. So there are levels of the being from the outside to the inside, and there are planes of consciousness that are there from below up. And adding to this complexity is this, that what we call as personality in our contemporary psychology is just one part, is the surface personality described by Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo described many beings. To cut a long story short, because otherwise it will be very complicated, very complex. To talk about it in a very composite manner, Sri Aurobindo talks about the outer being, which is equivalent to the surface personality that contemporary psychology studies, that he is describing as the outer being. But that is not the whole picture, because behind the outer being there is something else. That is his seminal contribution to the world of psychology. Sri Aurobindo's contribution. There are many contributions in psychology which Sri Aurobindo has made. One of the cardinal contributions is this concept of the subliminal personality or the inner being, which stands behind the outer being. Now, was it not known before? It was known before, of course, in mysticism, in spirituality. It was known in fragments. It was known partially. It was known as certain experiences here and there. Sri Aurobindo collated all those experiences and made them into a cohesive personality which can be developed, an inner personality which can be developed. He made it in a very cohesive way. And then behind that inner being, there is the inmost being. And that also is different, because it is the soul space where the inner being, inmost being resides. But this soul space is different from the usual soul space which we are conversant with from our ancient times. So I will just come one by one. You see that the outer being, the surface personality of the outer being is something which Sri Aurobindo has been constructed, by the Jivatma in conjunction with nature. So the outer being together with the subconscious, is constructed by the self or the Jivatma in conjunction with nature or Prakriti. And it has been done for a particular time period, for a particular cycle, in a particular point in time, or the zeitgeist or the time spirit. You see, at a particular time, you need to have a particular type of personality. I'm a psychiatrist today. 200 years back, a psychiatrist would have needed another type of personality, another type of thinking, another type of mentality. So you just cannot equate the two together. So each time needs something which is commensurate with that period, with that time spirit. So with the current time spirit, for the current culture, for the current milieu, for the current social milieu, for the current cultural milieu, for the current contemporary matrix, you need a type of personality, and that is made every time by conjunction with the spirit behind and the nature in front. Now, this is interesting. Why this is interesting? Because Sri Aurobindo says that this outer being is made every time new. Every time it is made in consonance with the demands of that time. And this outer being, with the demise of that individual, together with the subconscious, gets deconstructed. The subconscious is not carried over in future lives. Now, why this is important? Because today we have such a lot of past life therapies. We have so much. You go to the past life to find out the roots of what is happening to you in this life. But if you see Sri Aurobindo's paradigm, this every time this outer personality with his subconscious is constructed only for this time period, and it has no relevance afterwards, and it is deconstructed after when the person passes away, when a person dies, it is deconstructed, and then the spirit will construct another type of personality. The spirit doesn't die, the self doesn't die, the self will construct another personality together in conjunction with nature and another time period. It will according to the demands of that time. So that's why this is so important. Now, this outer being has our planes of consciousness. You see, and we have our, you see, grossly speaking, we have our physical plane of consciousness, and then we have our what Sri Aurobindo calls the vital plane of consciousness. Sri Aurobindo used the word vital as a noun. For the first time, he used the word vital as a noun. Vital is a plane of consciousness which contains our life energy and which is represented by our emotions, by our passions, by our dynamisms, by our action. And that is also different from the next plane that comes in evolution, which is the plane of mind, which is concerned with cognition, with our cognitive capacities. So see, these three are different things: the cognitive plane and the dynamic plane of life energy or the ill and vital, and then you have the physical plane. But the problem, Sri Aurobindo says, is that in the outer personality, they are all mixed together. So you can't separate them. In the outer personality, you just can't separate them. You can't just segregate them because they're all mixed together. And then they're revolving around the ego. And ego is what? Ego is shared in the system. Ego is not looked at in a moral way. Ego is not looked at a moral way. Ego is something, an entity which is made from these things. Ego is made from the physical consciousness, partly from the mental, partly from the vital. Everything contributes to make the ego. All these planes of consciousness, they contribute to make the ego, which is a sort of housekeeping being done by the ego. There is a sort of housekeeping. It is trying to balance the three. You see that is a lot of disharmony between the three, between the mind, body, and the physical. Now the mind might want that today I will read Savitri and attend Dr. Bijrani's class very nicely, but the body might come with a headache and might not allow you to have that concentration. So always there is a conflict going on between the different planes of consciousness. And this conflict is going on and the ego is trying to somehow balance them, but it cannot do the work perfectly. It somehow balances, like a coalition government, it somehow balances, but it can't do it perfectly. Why? Because it is, again, not because of any moral reason, but because it is statistically skewed. It might be skewed towards the intellect. It might be skewed towards the body. It might be skewed towards the vital. So therefore, it is very difficult for the ego to do anything. So then what was the solution? In India, the solution was always that you get out of the ego, kick out the ego. Then where do you go? Where do you go? If the ego is kicked out, then you go to the Brahman, you go to Nirvana, or you go to the great void, you go to the absolute, you leave everything and go to the great whiteness that is there, which is beyond everything, beyond all dualities of life. So that was all time throughout our tradition, that was what was followed. And that's why, and that is also very important for psychology to understand. Because, you know, when I first started the work on Sri Aurobindo psychology, philosophers used to tell me that in spirituality, this psychology has no value. I said, why? Because when we kick out the ego, there is only spirituality left. What do you do with your personality? You have nothing to do in this world. You work in this world. No work is possible now without the ego. So you live out the world. You live out. Psychology is impractical there. It disappears there. In spirituality, psychology disappears. So actually, this is true. If you live out the ego and you go to the what you call the egolessness, then what is there? There is no role for psychology. So Sri Aurobindo must have got some compassion for psychologists coming to him. So he made a truce. And then what was the truce? He made a truce. The truce was that if you find that the ego is disturbing, then if you kick out the ego, then personality will not remain. You cannot work in the world. You have no psychological value. So what can you do? You can bring something which is better than the ego in front, something which is more harmonious, something which is unbiased, something which is not skewed, something is there, deep behind, something is there. That's something you can bring in front. And with that, you can replace the ego and you can do the work of the ego in a better way. You see, again, Sri Aurobindo is not looking at ego from a moralistic viewpoint, which many people do. He is looking at it from purely psychological, and of course, there's a metaphysical psychology behind it. He's saying that because the ego cannot do its work properly, you have to have somebody to replace it who can do that work more properly, bring harmony into the system, balance the physical, vital, and the mental, and lead you up towards your along your aspiration to go higher. So you have to bring someone. Now, who is this someone? This someone again for to have this concept of someone to be brought forward. Again, Sri Aurobindo had to make an important shift even in the annals of spirituality. What was that? So long we always considered that the individual, you see, the individual self is represented by the Jivatma, who is beyond the manifestation. He is not participating in the manifestation. He is there. He is supporting the manifestation. We always have heard from childhood. When I was a child, I used to get puzzled. You say everybody's Atma is the same. How can everybody's Atma can be the same? And everybody has an Atma. And again, everybody's Atma is the same. Atma is the same everywhere. I would not understand it until I came to understand what Sri Aurobindo meant by the Jivatma. And then the question came to me, is the Jivatma singular or plural? Is it singular or plural? Then I gradually understood. It is like the curtain in your house. No? There is a curtain in your window which has many folds. You see, there a curtain has many folds. So each fold is one Jivatma, but each fold is connected with the other fold because it is coming from the same matrix of consciousness. So that is the Jivatma, which is behind the manifestation, which is not participating in the manifestation, supporting it from behind. But then Sri Aurobindo made one addition. Now, this was given a hint in the Upanishad. A hint was given, it was never developed. Sri Aurobindo developed it, Mother developed it. What was it? That this Jivatma can send a projection, actually sends a projection into the manifestation. And that projection he named as the Chaitya Purush, or the psychic being, which actually begins as a soul spark. And in evolution, it grows to experiences, accumulating experience of the experiences, until at one time it can be a fully formed psychic being or a psychic personality. It can become like that. And when this psychic being has been developed, it can come forward, and it can replace the ego. You can do the work of the ego in a higher way, in a better way. It can do that. But then, like that, it cannot come forward. Like that, if you have realized the Jivatma, you have to realize the psychic being. That doesn't mean that the psychic being will just march forward into your outer being. It doesn't mean like that. It cannot do like that. So it has to have a medium through which it has to come. You see, like that, because it is in the fourth dimension. You have to understand this. That the psychic being is in the fourth dimension. And our outer personality is not in the fourth dimension. Now, from the fourth dimension, somebody cannot just walk into your system. So how one can do it? Then Sri Aurobindo explained that in between the psychic being or the inmost being and the outer personality, there is a subliminal personality or the inner being that can be developed. And this is where Sri Aurobindo's real psychology starts, because the inner being goes up to the superconscious. The inner being goes down not only to the subconscious, not only from the subconscious, what Freud called the unconscious, Sri Aurobindo called subconscious. From there, it goes to the inconscious. And mind you, when it goes to the inconscious, it merges with the terrestrial inconscious. You are no longer an individual. The inner being at one point is no longer an individual. It merges with the consciousness goes down, 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 and merges with the terrestrial inconscious. Up it goes to the superconscious, again, which is not an individual thing. It's an impersonal thing. And side-wise, it goes into the cosmic consciousness. And this is very interesting. So by this, this is inner being, which will come to it, because real psychological work in Sri Aurobindo's system actually begins from the inner being. But before that, we'll come a little to the outer being, because many of us here are working in psychological field, and I will show you how interesting it is. It is not something to be discarded, to be understood. You see, as Sri Aurobindo said, that in the outer being, all things are mixed together. And in mixing up, there are many combinations that produced, many combinations that produced between the physical, vital, and the mental, of different permutations and combinations. I will talk of 3 or 4 of them, which are very interesting. What is Aurobindo calls the physical mind. The physical mind is the mind which is enmeshed in the physical schemata, in the physical consciousness. It is not the mind which is involved with emotions or cognition and all that. It is the mind where all of the senses are being modulated, sensory informations are being modulated, the physical consciousness is being modulated. Now, it is a very primitive mind. It is a very basic mind. It is a very basic mind, and it is a habitual mind, a mind of habits. It is a habitual mind. So all habitual things happen because of are happening at that mind. And most of the time, as you see, we are actually in the physical mind. When we are coming out of the house, are we thinking of great things? You are thinking whether I have locked the room properly, whether I have switched off the geyser, whether I have charged my mobile, whether my daughter is coming home at the right time from school. All these small things we are continuously thinking and thinking and thinking. The same trivial things go on, nah? Like it goes on and on and on. So all these things happen at the level of the physical mind. It's a habitual mind, and this mind, you see, is also the Sri Aurobindo says 100 years back. 100 years back, Sri Aurobindo had written in the Life Divine that is a blind automatism of matter. A blind automatism of matter. There is no intervention of the mind principle. What is that? Electrons, now they are rotating in the orbit. There is a blind automatism. Today, the electrons decide that they will not rotate. What can happen? But they are not deciding because there is no cognitive, what you call, input into them. So it is a mechanical thing that they have to go on doing. They have to go on rotating, rotating, and rotating. So there is a blind automatism matter. Why I am saying this? It is only today we are understanding that this principle of automaticity is behind many problems like ADHD, like obsessive compulsive disorder. No? We don't think about it nowadays in purely psychodynamic terms or psychoanalytic terms. So these things might be important to some extent, but the basic thing in OCD, you see there is an automaticity going on. Of course, there are many kinds of automaticity. I'm not talking about that automaticity that goes on in things like temporal lobe epilepsy or sleepwalking, where those are episodic in nature. But the automaticity is persistent, which is always there, chronic, and is a what you call a nagging difficulty. I'm talking about that, and that you can understand when you read Sri Aurobindo, and then of this blind automatism of matter, and which we are now trying to understand. We are many of our functionings of our behavioral problems. We are understanding the genesis is there, and you see, this is something new areas that have to be explored. Sri Aurobindo has given seed ideas that have to be explored. Then there is another thing called the vital physical, you see, and physical vital. The physical vital is what? The physical vital is that the vitality has to obey the physical demands, the demands of the physical consciousness. The vitality has to obey the demands of the physical consciousness. And the vital physical is another thing where the physical has to obey the vitality. The physical consciousness has to obey the vitality. Now, when we talk about the vital physical, it is very interesting. If you see in evolution, if you go back to evolution, if you see that at first there was matter. So matter is represented by inertia. And then Sri Aurobindo explains that the life energy came in. The life energy impinged on matter. This impingement on matter, you see, there is an occult dimension of this. I'm talking about the occult dimension. I'm not talking in real, what you call in real scientific terminology, but we see the occult implication that the life energy is impinging on matter, and this impingement is causing a terrible conflict. There is a what you call it, there is a terrible disturbance. There is a disturbance of that inertia. The inertia is disturbed. It is a terrible impact, huge impact. The life energy impact, what you call impacting on the matter, which is inert, which is dumb, which is dull, and it is forcing it to come out, to flower, to blossom. So it was a mighty impact. And that impact, that strain of that impact, that pain of that impact, is the first pain. The first pain in occult science, the first pain was experienced when life energy impinged on matter, and that pain is hidden, dormant, still today in our vital consciousness, inside our organs. And when we become ill, like a post-traumatic stress disorder, so from an evolutionary perspective, that kind of space it comes out, and that's why that pain becomes that pain becomes chronic, pain becomes unbearable. Yeah, I will still tell you, this is why in many chronic pain syndromes, perhaps this is why that it is not the analgesics that work. Sometimes it is the antidepressants that work better than the analgesics. You see, because that pain has got occult and psychological dimensions, the primitive pain. So this is the vital physical. Of course, there are other connotations also. The vitality, today, the vitality wants that the physical has to conform to it. And because of that, we have today our hedonistic culture. The hedonistic culture today is because of the vital physical. So it is a sort of osura. It's a sort of the vital physical beings, a sort of asuric culture or Rakshasic culture, or a culture of the Rakshasa it brings. And the physical vital is a different thing. The physical vitality is the vitality has to follow what the physical wants. You see, vitality has to follow what the physical wants, and this is one at one end. This results in laziness, inertia. You see, people who are lazy, very interesting. Mother said once that people who are lazy, they are not always very lazy. They will be very energetic in watching aggressive things in media, in television, cinema, and all. When mother was talking about that time television was not so prominent, but she hinted that aggression in the media, they would very like to have it, and they like to have very rich food. You see, so they want to stimulate themselves. You see this like wanting to see aggressive things, laziness, wanting to have this rich food is showing that the inertia is wanting to have some stimulation. You see, mother was a very astute clinical psychologist in this sense. So and at the other end, this physical vital produces things like what you call rapes and masochism, sadism, masochism, and all these things, these chronic things. They are product of the physical vital. So this is, you see, this. So what I'm wanting to say, these combinations, they have also their value. And then there is a vital mind. The vital mind is the mind which is serving the vitality. The mind which is serving the vitality. It is not serving great cognitive ideas. It is not serving great intellectual ideas. It is not serving great innovative ideas. It is just serving the vitality, the passion. That also needs to be served. So there's the vital mind, and it's the vital mind which is responsible. If you go a bit further, Dr. Dalal has explained very beautifully that how the vital mind is responsible for our defense mechanisms in psychology, how it is responsible for defense mechanisms in psychology. Anyway, because our time is short, I will go back to the inner being. The inner being, so this is, we are talking about the outer being. When we go to the inner being, the story is totally different. The inner being has got an inner mind. It has got an inner vital, and it has got an inner physical. The word inner physical doesn't sound nice in English. When they use the word subtle physical. So it has an inner mind, has got capacities which the outer mind doesn't have. What capacities? Suprarational faculties. Suprarational faculties like intuition, like inspiration, like revelation. You see, intuition. Kekule, who was wanting to build a structure of the basic ring, was unable to do it. He was toying with different models, and then suddenly he had a dream. A dream was of a snake eating its own tail. Multiple small snakes eating their tails, and immediately got up at the middle of night and he made that famous hexagonal structure on which organic chemistry now rests. Then again, from where has the snake with the eating its tail come? It has come from where? It has come again from the cosmic consciousness. And because why? Because it is a very ancient Greek symbol. And all these ancient symbols as archetypal symbols, they are present in the cosmic consciousness. Something which you also came very close to, been identified. And then it is a symbol that is representing a consolidation of power. And then that entered because he was looking how to pack power into a symbol, because a formula is also a symbol, a structure is also a symbol, and that came and helped it. So it's a very beautiful thing, that intuition, how it helps. Now, we also have intuition at times, but we don't know how to use it because the intuition gets diluted at our level. It gets diluted by the mind, and then we have to learn techniques how to develop intuition. You see, in Synthesis of Yoga, which is Sri Aurobindo's logbook, Sri Aurobindo has given ideas and what you call seed ideas, how to develop that intuition. Then you have revelation, and knowledge is revealed. Guru Nanak, how did he make Sikhism? That the knowledge, that a voice came to him. That's not hallucination. If you call it hallucination, then it is a hallucination of a higher order. That there is no Hindu and there is no Muslim. And then he tried to integrate the deeper elements of Islam and Vedanta. And that's how Sikhism came. But Sri Aurobindo said that he did it ahead of his time. The masses were not ready to understand its full significance. So they made many dogmas out of it. But actually, it was a very great thing. But all these things, you see, they are being done by the inner mind. And then there are other functions which will come, which is Sri Aurobindo's main work. The other functions which the inner mind will lead to, that will come before talking about the inner vital a bit. What is the inner vital? You see, in our outer vital, we have energy. But that energy, in the morning, we get up with a lot of energy. But afterwards, our energy, we can't utilize it. We get cramped. The energy gets cramped because something in our mind disturbs us, something in our body disturbs us, something in the environment happens, and then our mood gets off. So we can't utilize that energy. But in the inner vital, there is an energy or pranic shakti which is connected with the cosmic energy. So that is, it is an energy which is connected with the cosmic energy. So these Hottojogis try to develop that. I said that some of these things of the inner being have been known in patches, in fragments throughout our time, ancient times. And so the Hottojogis, they knew that how to tap that cosmic energy. Or there are other ways also. There are other Indian spiritual ways how to tap that cosmic energy, and then from that energy it can go and it can supply the energy to the outer being. And in the vital, you see that the vital is something which one has to work upon that vital. One has to work upon that vital. We'll come to that if we have time. And then we have the physical, the subtle physical, the inner physical. The inner physical or subtle physical is a plane of consciousness which we are not aware of, unfortunately. You see, all of us, if we describe a person, we try to identify with his thinking and with his emotions. Thinking, oh, he is a good mathematician. Emotions, he's a very angry sort of person. So we have classified a person. His thought is of a mathematician, his emotions are that of a person's anger. Therefore, there is a uniqueness in his thinking of a mathematical mind. There is a uniqueness in his emotions. He is an angry person. Similarly, there is a uniqueness of each individual's body consciousness, which we are not aware. All of us have a unique body consciousness that has to be known, that has to be unearthed. This is quite, we need separate sessions for understanding this. Just sufficient to know that this is something which can be developed, Any of you who plays the piano, because mother gave this example, playing the piano gives a very good idea that when you play the piano, and you can play perfectly well, but your mind can go on doing mathematical sums, doing on exactly other things. You see, there is a type of body that you can understand, have a glimpse of what is body consciousness. So if the body consciousness will develop, then you can exert your mental will over the body. If the body consciousness is developed, you see very small infants, when they fall down, then what the mother does, mother comes and scolds the floor as if it has nothing has happened to the child, and the child takes their suggestion, and the child is okay. He was what you call crawling, and he just stops his crawl, and he doesn't stop crying because that it is the floor is at fault. So mother gave the suggestion that nothing has happened to you. It is the floor that is the culprit, and child took that suggestion. After some time, when the child's mind develops and what you call the doubts develop, then the child loses this habit of complete faith on what the mother says. See, well, we can redevelop that faith by sadhana. We can redevelop that faith by spiritual pursuit to a point where our mental will can exert itself on the body. So that is a very beautiful thing. This is a spirituality of the future. It's a sort of spirituality of the future which we have to develop. At one point of time, we have to go time and we have to develop. And then what I say that the inner mind, now the inner mind leads to something else, which is again Sri Aurobindo's greatest contribution. One of the Sri Aurobindo's greatest contribution to the world of thought ever that has been made since civilization has begun. What is that? You see that Sri Aurobindo's main theory is that man is a transitional being, and there is an evolution of consciousness going on. So that the higher planes of being can evolve, higher types of being can evolve than the present human being, and that is therefore what is needed is a concomitant evolution of the cognitive consciousness. The cognitive consciousness itself has to evolve. There will be higher planes of cognition that will come one after another. What a marvelous idea! Nobody ever has thought of it. It's Sri Aurobindo who has first time in the world he has given this, that the cognitive consciousness itself will evolve and will evolve and produce planes after planes until it goes to the highest creative consciousness. So our time is, you see, it requires a different understanding, this different how the planes will evolve. But one thing I will just tell you to show that in the beginning itself how interesting it is. That the first plane that comes is the plane of the higher mind. And the higher mind contains all our contradictory and complementary ideas together. All our contradictory and complementary ideas together. You see, today, if I have a belief in democracy, and tomorrow I want to forget democracy and bring capitalism in in my thinking, then I have to deconstruct my democratic thinking and bring capitalism. But in the higher mind, you don't have to deconstruct anything. All things add up. All things that are complementary and contradictory, they are there together. Now, just if we start going there, you see, going there is a big thing. But we can just start going there, even at the school level, at the educational level, at the level of the clinical psychological work, we can do that. Then what can happen? We will be free from exclusivism. Mother said that one of the things that disturbs the world is exclusive thinking. My religion, my thought, my idea, my politics, my thing is important, and I want to impose it on others. People say that delusional schizophrenic is a threat to society. I would say, what are these delusional schizophrenic can be a threat to society? 1% of the population suffers from schizophrenia. Of them, how many are delusionally aggressive? Not like that. But real culprits are people with overvalued ideas. People with overvalued ideas, huh? People who are cult leaders, who are religious leaders, or who are political leaders, who make many theories, and they try to impose them on people. And because of them, this radicalization of youth is happening all over the world. This radicalization of youth that people are worried about is happening because exclusive ideas are being enforced on the system. Now, when you go towards the higher mind, you have to work your way in such a way that you have to develop by incorporating all your opposite ideas. As Sri Aurobindo once said, that I know that the opposite of what I say is true. I only hear the guts to say that. I know that the opposite of what I say is true. No, but at the moment, what I say is truer. So he was a bit naughty also. So to avoid confusion, he also said that. But at the moment, what I say is truer. But the first part is important. That I know that the opposite of what I say is true. So it is Catholic, his Catholicity, that you accept all contradictions. And that is showing his uniqueness. He has accepted all contradictions and synthesized them and integrated them. You see, his integral yoga. Integral yoga is what? Where all contradictions have been brought together. So he says that all problems of existence are problems of harmony. That is his watchword. That is his main, what you call, formula. That all problems of existence are problems of harmony. Now, we can do that. We can start doing that. I always tell teachers that if you have debate competition in the school, then you set one group of students against another group of students with one idea against another idea. Tell one student to come up with contradictory ideas for the motion and against the motion. Tell the same boy to same student to speak for the motion and against the motion. Then they say, is that possible? Why not? If you can teach a child to play chess with oneself, we teach children to chess. Children play chess with themselves. So why not? This can also be done. Since very small ways, you see, we have to bring out all these things. And then another thing is this: we should also understand that our present day, you see, that when we're talking about the inner vital, our present day problem in our stress is, you see, stress is a very big subject. I'm not going into details into it, but our biggest problem in stress, if you tell me from the psychological point of view, is that we are always competing with time. We are always competing with time, deadlines. No? We have our deadlines, we have our projects to be completed by this time. In executive, you see, in the executives in corporate sector, people are having heart problems, 10 years, ischemic heart problems, 10 years before the general population. And the main reason is the sense of time urgency, which is the hallmark of type of personality, that you are always competing with time. Now that is a foolish thing, because time has come from the bosom of eternity, timelessness. We will always get defeated if you compete with time. The Shobhita says, make friends with time. Make a friends with time, and that is what in integral psychology, in integral counseling, that is what we are. It's a very big cue that we can work upon to teach people how to be friends with time. I tell people like that who are very busy and not finding outwardly any time for anything. I said that you work in such a way as you have eternity at your disposal. Only then time will come and be your friend. Time will come and help you if you work in a way with a mentality that I have eternity at your disposal. And then you have to go to your inner vital. You see, that's why the inner being is important, because only in the inner vital you can be connected with timelessness. And once you are stabilized, you have brought silence and peace inside your inner vital, then in the outer life, if you are very busy, you will not have an ischemic heart disease because of that. If your inner stability is there, which is supporting your outer work, your outer dynamism is to be supported by an inner silence, by an inner peace, by development of the inner being. Then only that outer being will not go and disturb you in the way it is disturbing you now. So these are small things, but integral psychology has got at every level our vision of this consciousness. If you understand consciousness, then you have a vision of helping people in many ways, So this is just a inkling that I am trying to give you, a small inkling that I'm trying to give you. And this inner being needs to be developed. Inner being needs to be developed. And then there are a certain point you see that the psychic being I was talking about, which Sri Aurobindo has said, and the Jivatma are separate, though they are same, because it is the Jivatma which is projecting the psychic being. But their experiences are different. The psychic being carries the most intense experiences of our life, and experiences which have a soul value. Now, this is very interesting. Very interesting. Why? Why? That if you have dementia, people who have dementia, they think that everything is lost. Even the neurosurgeons tell, oh, he has become vegetative. Why you have become vegetative? He has lost his memory. But what matters if he has lost how much he had earned or how much we had brought this thing or that? What matters? The inner essences are there preserved in the psychic being. The psychic being only preserves the best experiences of life, the experiences which are turning points in life, which have an element of divinity. And Sri Aurobindo says that is a permanent addition, because all other things are not going to be carried from life to life. They are going to the cosmic waste paper basket. Or most of the things now which we have known or which we have mugged up, they are going to go to the waste paper basket. Only the real memories. And if I ask any person, Acha, what is your age? Frequently asked, well, sir, my age is 50 years. Can you tell up to the age of 50, how many deepest experiences which touch the core of your heart? How many you had? People can't tell more than 4 or 5. First time here was in front of the Samadhi of Mother in Sri Aurobindo. First time one saw the Kanchenjunga peak. First time one heard the news of death which went deep inside and struck a chord. How many people, how many experiences we can have? So these are the psychic experiences. These are preserved you see, as memory transcripts. These are preserved in the cosmic consciousness as memory transcripts. So that is why I tell that a dementia patient doesn't matter. The outer memory is lost. The psychic being carries the memory. You see, I will tell Dr. Bijlani will be very surprised. My father was an Alzheimer's patient, and when he had lost he has lost everything, memory and everything. Suddenly one fine morning, he said, you see, he was the first person to study animal genetics from India in Texas, and he was geneticist in that way. So he told me, "Are Sri Aurobindo had somatic mutation." Now he didn't know in what context he was saying that or who had told him. He could not tell anything further. But the word somatic mutation is a very decent way of describing Sri Aurobindo's body in state, which lay between 5th to 9th December 1950 without decomposition, and which had been described to emit a bluish white light, which people who had Mother's Grace had saw that, but everybody didn't see that. But everybody would see that body was not decomposing. So that somatic mutation was an award. You see that remained in the psychic memory. It came. It was never discussed when he was in his senses. He never discussed it. We never had a chance of discussing it. I never knew he ever knew about that state of Sri Aurobindo's body. That also I never knew that he knew about it. But suddenly he said, so this is psychic memory. So all these things remain. The psychic memory remains, and these are memory templates. They will go from life to life. And in next, you see, these seed memories, these memory templates will be there in the cosmic consciousness, and future lives, they will influence future lives. And therefore, rebirth in consciousness-based psychology doesn't mean A is born as B. A is not born as B. You see, rebirth in consciousness is a cosmic phenomenon, not an individual phenomenon. Rebirth in Sri Aurobindo's perspective is a cosmic phenomenon. It is not an individual phenomenon. The psychic memories remain in the psychic world as memory transcripts, and they can go and influence different people who are being born at different points in time. So same memory, you see, not only one person, they can influence many persons. Or if the memory transcript is very coherent, very consistent, worked upon in one's lifetime, then you can go and get attached to wholly, without in parts, without wholly, to someone who is being born. See, you see, like Beethoven's music, it is there preserved in one sphere of consciousness, and people who are open to it at different points in time can take inspiration from it. So Mother said that instead of saying that A is born as B, You just think about lines of consciousness. There is a line of consciousness which in 1900 A is manifesting, in 1950 B is manifesting, in 2020 C is manifesting. So different A, B, C are different persons at different points in time with different personalities, different swadharmas, but they are manifesting the same line of consciousness, though they're outwardly they are different. So it is the consciousness, and that's why it is very important to understand the psychic being. Though I am telling it in a very simple way, it is more complex than what I am trying to say. I think my time is up because we will have to stop for questions. But I was just giving an inkling. We was just trying to give an inkling of what this integral yoga psychology, what this consciousness-based psychology holds. It is going to break all our usual formulas of understanding things. It is going to break barriers. And you see, if we work upon it, then we will be offering many things which the world actually wants now. Because you see, the world has now come to a point where the gulf between mysticism and science, rationality and scientific mind is breaking down. What is if you ask me what is the proof? I said the proof is there. Why children are interested in Harry Potter? 30 years back, if Harry Potter was being read 30, 40 years back, you would have been poo-pooed that you are reading something fresh. But you see, the global youth mind now is developing in such a way that it has become circular in thinking. It wants to take truth from all sides. This has happened, and it has taken 100 years after Sri Aurobindo started writing his things. Many people used to lament that people don't read Sri Aurobindo, people don't understand Sri Aurobindo. Then I tell them, it will, when time will come, people will understand. Because you see, individual people could understand Sri Aurobindo, but a global mind was not being able to understand, because the global mind had to come to a point where it is shifting from linear to non-linear dimension. Then it can accept in a more wide way. And that shift is now happening now, where the divisions are breaking down, where people can change disciplines. Huh? The IIT engineer became an administrative officer and then become a chief minister. There is no contradiction between all these things. So we see that all these formulas are breaking down, which is an index that the mind is becoming non-linear. And it has taken now 100 years of the Sri Aurobindo's ideas, writings have been consolidated in the earth consciousness. Now they are being ready to be to be taken up by the universal global mind. And that work we have to do. Of course, if we don't do, then somebody else will do. You see, force is impersonal. And in India, if we don't do this work, the outsiders will do this work. And the outsiders, with all their best intention, they will distort also a little, because we need to do this work from our Indian parampara also. Thank you. Thank you, Aditi, for giving me this time, giving me 3 minutes extra to speak. And now, sorry for that. And so anybody can ask questions, or you can add to it. It's not about asking also, you can add something to it.
Yes, Manan, you can unmute and ask.
Thank you. So, Namaste, Dada. Thanks for the wonderful session. In Indian thought, there is so much emphasis on discovering Swabhava and Swadharma, and in Integral Yoga also we talk about, the mother talks about discovering the truth of your being in her words on education. My question is, what is the role of ego in discovering the truth of being? And then say, if we have some idea about it, what is the role of ego further to manifest the truth of our being? Thank you.
You see, up to a point, ego helps. You see, what is the ego? From the matrix of the inconscious, the being starts organizing itself. You see, the inconscious, if the superconscious has come down to the inconscious, stark inconscious, where everything is the nether opposite of what the superconscious is. So life is represented by death, knowledge by dark, ignorance, light by darkness, joy by sorrow, happiness by suffering, and all that. Now, from that matrix, something is being constructed. It's just you are constructing an idol from mud. Now, when you are constructing an idol, like now we are having Durga Puja. When you are constructing something, you need a scaffolding. We use a bamboo scaffolding net first. After that, it is not. You see, scaffoldings are required up to a certain point. So that scaffolding is the ego, around which these things are getting organized. And this ego, therefore, is made from the same elements from where the being is being made. This falsehood, this ignorance, this suffering, and all that. But it is needed. Otherwise, there will be an individual uniqueness will not start. So the ego brings with it the imparts that first individual uniqueness, though it is not perfect, though it is distorted, deviated, and it is full of discrepancies, still that individuality first starts developing because the ego is there. At a certain point of time, you see that the ego becomes difficult to handle because it is made from those same elements, and therefore it is biased towards one element to the other. And then, therefore, if you have to transcend the ego. Now, transcending where? In our literature before Sri Aurobindo also this was known, but it was said that you have to shift from the lower nature to the higher nature, where there is no ego. But in Sri Aurobindo's system, it is not only going to the higher nature, it is replacing the ego by the psychic being, which is a completely different thing. Going from the lower nature to the higher nature will release you from the ego, but then that release also is not, we should not think that it is going to be so easy. Do you think that release from the ego is easy? For example, from your intellectual ideas, you can be released by working on your intellectual ego. From your vitality, desires, and dynamisms, you can still use Lord Buddha's formula to get over it, get over your desire ego, the vital ego. But what about the physical ego, which is holding your physical body? If you want to go about it, then your physical body will get disrupted. And that happened. That was going to happen. When the mother was wanting to get rid of her physical ego, she found that it was the physical body was not supporting it. It was going disorganized. And she said a point came, she was wanting to have a physical harmony without the physical ego and without the disharmony caused by the absence of the physical ego. But she was unable to do it by herself, because she said the point came that anything could have happened. That means death could have happened. And then she had to invoke the destructive power of Shiva. The power of Shiva was invoked to destroy the physical ego in her. And that is why nowadays, when I talk about the ego, I don't say that you don't go out to fight with the ego, because it will take lifetimes. And then rather bring the psychic being in front so that it will push the ego to its designated place where it should be, or make it subservient. So that is why I always tell that let us bring the psychic being in front. And then again, Sri Aurobindo said that even if you have succeeded in doing away with all your ego, physical ego, vital ego, mental ego, a vague impression of the ego still remains. He called that substratum ego. Just a vague impression, that is something, some individuality. Some individuality is maintained outwardly, that a vague impression remains. And then Sri Aurobindo said that many yogis throughout ages, they have come to that substratum ego and they thought that they had reached the Brahman. So how difficult it is. How difficult it is. So for us, it is much better, therefore, when we talk about the ego, we concentrate on the psychic being and aspire, because we are blessed. We are blessed because the mother's force acts on the psychic being. Remember, that is why only in our ashram, there is no diksha. Every ashram has an initiation, as a mantra initiation, as a diksha in every ashram in the world. Only in our ashram there is no initiation of diksha, because the mother's force goes directly and touches the psychic being, if you are open to it. And then that doesn't mean that the work has been fully done. Then it is our job. You see, when you have got attracted to Mother and Sri Aurobindo by standing at the samadhi or somehow, then you must be sure that somehow your psychic being has been touched. Now your whole life work is to perfect the instruments. The psychic being is perfect, but the instruments with the psychic being will work through, the vital, physical, mental, they have to be made perfect. So now the task is to make them perfect, which requires a whole lifetime of sadhana. So you see it in that way. Anyway, if Manan is here, I'm very happy, because when you are there, I always feel that someone is there with me. Yes? Aditi will add something? Somebody can add something?
Yeah, I think he only has to say something more. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Dada. That was very nice. I have one more question. This is around the relationship or the interaction of technology and social media and, say, artificial intelligence with the different centers of consciousness, especially of the outer being. Could you talk a bit about how they might be impacting us individually and collectively?
I will give a very concrete example. I was seeing children who are affected with this blue whale, this game, and they were wanting to commit suicide. And when they had stopped playing the game, the suicidal ideas were not going away. I was very surprised that they stopped playing the game, but they were not being freed from suicidal ideas. Then you see, then I was thinking about it very deeply. What you were saying in this, what you were saying in there, I was thinking in this context very deeply about the same thing. And then two things came to me. One is that the ergonomics. No? Ergonomics is that man and machine, there is an interaction which we understand very little. If we are attracted by the machine also attracts us. In between, there is a space that is produced. And because of ergonomics, we have been able to understand many accidents, or how many engines, big machines in industries have failed. We are not understanding. But this is one thing. But the more important thing is, all of us has a private space and a public space. For example, if you are in a crowded metro train and there is a crowd around you, don't mind because you are going to get down at the next station. But if you are in an empty room and somebody who is unknown comes very close to you, you will feel uncomfortable. So we have a private space and a public space. Even dogs of one lane don't go to the other lane. If you have dogs in your lane, you can watch them. They will not go to the other lane at night. So they have also a space, a boundary. But when one enters cyberspace, this whole formula is disturbed. When you go to cyberspace, then this distinction between this private space and public space, this totally goes haywire. And if you are not organized around a central entity, if your personality is not organized around something, then you will be sucked up in that cyberspace and you can end up going to a place where you will do any foolish thing that you are being told to do, or you will be influenced by anything. So that is a very important thing, that one, it is not that we have to shun all cyberspace or social media like that, but we have to be organized around some central principle. Otherwise, you see, life is flowing along a stream. But you see, we have to flow consistently. You cannot flow like a dry twig being washed with the winds here and there. You cannot flow like that. So you have to flow with the consistency. So this is one thing. Other thing also, you have to work simultaneously. There was the physical mind, which I was talking about, because the physical mind is a habitual mind. Once your habitual mind is getting entrapped with the same habits, then it is very difficult to get over it. That's why the physical mind, which Sri Aurobindo said, that is supramental transformation. The first thing that has to be transformed is the physical mind, the mind of habits. Because once you are habituated to something, you cannot change. So the first thing that has to be changed. And when the supramental light came into the physical mind, that was called the mind of light. And that mind of light was transmitted to the mother when Sri Aurobindo left his body. When Sri Aurobindo left his body, what transmitted to the mother was the mind of light, the physical mind which is supramentalized. And then only mother could do all her beautiful experiments. All the experiences she had leading to the supramental, only she could do after the physical mind was, the supramentalized physical mind came to her as the mind of light. So this habitual mind, that has also to be worked upon. So at different levels it has to be worked upon. But the main thing is that we have to organize ourselves around a certain ideal, and that should start in our schooling, in our education system long before. Yes, thank you, Manan, for giving me an opportunity to answer something which I love to answer.
I think I have a little quick question, if Dr. Kaul allows me.
Sure, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's more than mesmerizing eloquence. Rather, I would say from Dr. Basu, it's timelessness in your speech. And it covers both breadth as well as depth. So one thing I would like to put forward in, that's there in recent times, for last couple of decades at least, there have been democratization of a study in a new paradigm that has surfaced, and it is called consciousness. And that's some kind of hard problem of consciousness from Dr. David Chalmers, who himself...
Yes. Which only Sri Aurobindo has answered. Problem is the problem which only Sri Aurobindo has answered.
So thing is that now it is now it is a quite open domain, and we have seen that people from different domains, from this cognitive neuroscience, cognitive psychology, this quantum physics, cosmologists, and so many disciplines, thoughts are surfacing in to describe what is consciousness. We traditionally, from Eastern philosophy, those who are a little bit attached to it, I think we have little doubt onto that. Most of this crux of this question from rather it is a Western philosophical point of view. My point is that in this cross domain, there have been obviously in your last question also that does that artificial intelligence is also come across. And if we see in European paradigm, there have been a huge project, and that's called Human Brain Project. And it is huge, huge. They are going for modeling human brain and everything. And now thing is that it's a question of this, whether we could define consciousness. Now, honestly speaking, and it is a little regret also, in journals, we don't see, I didn't see any paper that depicts this, our integral yoga, the way you have depicted something like that, but that is little absent. So would you like to enlighten on that?
The first thing I would say about what you call the hard problem in consciousness. Now, hard problem in consciousness, what David Chalmers defined was that very difficult to understand that how a world of colors, life, energy, vitality, multiplicity, variety can emerge from the inertia or matrix which is inert. No, matter is inert. Matter is totally inert, dull, from where you can understand physics and chemistry, from where, how you can understand psychology from it, how you can understand culture, society, with all the colors, with all the variations, with all these fluctuations in life, with all your what you call tragedies and comedies and all things that flower. How is it possible? Now, then David Chalmers has said that everything has been solved, only this problem is it is very difficult for science to solve. And Sri Aurobindo solves this. Sri Aurobindo, how he solves it? He says that the inconscience is a phenomenal inconscience. It is not a fundamental inconscience. You see, the superconscious, it came down. You see, it came down into the inconscious. From the inconscious, evolution starts. But evolution doesn't start from zero. From the superconscious has come down into the inconscious. And that coming down is also not something haphazard. It is not something which is, what you call it, just like that. It came down in a very structured way. And when it was coming down, it was also making different non-evolutionary planes of consciousness. It was populating non-evolutionary planes of consciousness until it came down, 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 and it sank into the inconscious. And from the inconscious through evolution, it will be released. That is why you can see that this flowering of all sorts of potentialities are happening, which is not unusual because it is there. It has come down from the superconscious. So therefore, it is perfectly logical. Now, for Sri Aurobindo, we have tried in our book that will be being printed in the Ashram Press. We have worked upon the definition of consciousness. The consciousness is a multidisciplinary subject today. And to work on a definition like that, just like that, giving a definition is difficult unless you work upon it. So we have worked upon it to give a standard concept of what is consciousness. But in Sri Aurobindo's concept, you see, consciousness is simultaneously awareness and energy together. So it is awareness and energy together. It's not only awareness, it's not only made of chit, it is also chit shakti. Now confusion arises because in our ancient literature we use chit in one sense, and today we use consciousness more in terms of matter and energy. When scientists speak of consciousness, they speak of matter energy, and when the mystics speak of consciousness, they speak of something that that is pure, transcendent, that is what you call infinite, so that they call as chit. Now, what the mystic is saying and what the scientist is saying, are they the same thing? Because we are using the same term for different experiences. That is why this confusion is arising. You see, when the mystic is describing consciousness in terms of pure experience, and scientists are describing it in terms of an interface between matter and energy. Now, are they different things or the same thing? Outwardly, if you see that they are different, but then Sri Aurobindo links them. Sri Aurobindo links the two, and that is very important to understand. And to linking the two, we have to understand the involution and evolution, these two phenomena which Sri Aurobindo has described in terms of consciousness. Then we can understand how we can define consciousness. You see, I will tell Aditi, once we have a program for that, whole program we will build up to a point where we can give the definition of consciousness. You see, the program has to be built up in such a way, suddenly like that, such a big issue, you cannot just pronounce it very simply in a few terms. No? Like that, Chatokdari kore to hobe na. Like that, in Chatokdari, it will not happen like that. So I think that we have to work upon that in a way. Very, very interesting. That how that mystics constitute and the scientist consciousness, they are speaking of different domains, whether we should keep them separate, or is there any utility of linking them, or if they can be linked, how they can be linked. This should be the whole aim of that program. Be very interesting. We can come to that. Thank you, thank you, Dr. Biswas, for raising up this very interesting issue. I think we have to work upon one day, then it will be very interesting. Yes, okay. Before that, Mr. Alok wants to talk. Alok.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Good
Mr.
evening.
Alok.
Good evening. You just spoke about this rebirth, where all these stuff, no, the consciousness is new, and in this context, I wanted to understand what is the nature of Swadharma and Swabhava.
What is the nature of?
Swadharma and Swabhava. So, if the birth is always new, and there is a new permutation and combination from the universal mind and universal vital, then what happens to the nature of Swadharma and Swabhava? Is there a continuity or there is a disruption? Yeah.
That's Shobin's answered. Mother has answered this. That you see that Swadharma and Swabhav, you see that is the things that are partnering to it in the outer being, they will not be transmitted from birth to birth. But there are certain divine elements in Swadharma and also in Swadharma, and there are certain divine elements. For example, Shobinda has described that what is the divine element in a warrior? That courage, that loyalty, that absolute surrender to the divine, to the ideal. That will remain in the psychic consciousness, that will go. Or in a musician, there's a certain gift that has come from the superconscious. There's certain, you see, Anahata Vani that has been brought down from that plane of consciousness. Anahata Vani is a music that goes on in a very high sphere of consciousness, which doesn't strike a surface, therefore there is no sound. From there it has been brought and manifested. So these things, you see, the touch of divinity is there in your Swabhav, in your Swadharma, that will be preserved. Only those points. Now we see that whole Swadharma Swabhav, the touch of divinity will be there at very important points in life, right? Turning points in life. And it is not consistent. It is not there all the time. So all those things which are there, which are invested with some element of intuition, some element of divinity, some element which helps you to turn something, or is a turning point in life, then of course that will be preserved.
Yeah, that means that all these experiences which are touched by some kind of essence and transcends the time, they remain with you and they come down when there is a rebirth.
That means that they will be attached to different people. You see, it will not come down to, it might not come down to one single person, different persons at different times also. Very complex. Okay. Yes, Ankita, you are wanting to say something? Ankita?
I think we can just stop the questions now, because otherwise it's such an interesting and elaborative topic. We can just go on. Maybe I can give to Dr. Bijlani if you want to say something.
Dr. Basu has just inaugurated a series of 5 talks on psychology that we'll be having in the month of October. And he has set the pace, set a sort of a standard, which is understandable. And although his face was not showing too well because of the power cut in Pondicherry, you can see that in spite of that darkness around, how much inner light was there. And therefore, it's understandable that there are so many questions. And unfortunately, the time is limited. I myself learned so much from this, and as those of you who could make see my movements would have noticed I was taking notes, and there's so much that I learned. Just to make a couple of points, one of the points that I could say a lot more, but because the time is limited. Firstly, I mean, it's given a very good idea for school education. That is, you have a debate, but then you ask the same student to speak both for and against the motion. And that would be an excellent way of developing the potential that the child has for the ordinary mind going towards the higher mind. And secondly, I've never read Harry Potter, but Dr. Basu has stimulated me. I think should read it, because if the youngsters today are finding it interesting and Dr. Basu has seen in it the signs of a higher consciousness, I think it will be certainly worth reading. There was one question about the books that one could read on the subject, and one of the finest collections which one could start with, are the compilations by Dr. A.S. Dalal. So these are some of the things I thought you can say. And thank you again, Dr. Soumitra Basu, for an excellent beginning to this series. And we hope to have you again and again.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. It's always so much of joy and gratitude to listening to Dr. Basu. I personally get so inspired, and it's worth learning and living integral psychology, what I've been learning from all his lectures over the years. So much of gratitude for joining us today. And we just end with a moment of silence. Thank you, everyone.